Right, thank you. I'm going to start with an apology. So I'm Peter Maccallum. I'm the Chief Technical Officer at Elixir. If you've met me at this conference, I have a cold. I've just worked out, I've got a cold, so I've probably been contagious for about 2 days. If you've shaken hands with me, you probably have a cold now as well. And I'm going to follow up with a non-apology, but I'll come to the non-apology in a moment. So we're here to talk about stewardship of critical infrastructure. I am an infrastructure person. I like server rooms, I like databases, but I'm not going to talk about infrastructure. I'm going to talk about the other part of the exam question, stewardship. So I'm going to talk about the people, not because I think people are infrastructure or human resources, but because, of course, we need the people who put it together. And here's the non-apology. I'm going to talk about this from Elixir's point of view, which means I'm going to talk about it at the size of a geographical unit about the size of a continent, not at an international level and not at the size of an individual institute. That's because that's what I know, but I hope that some of the things I talk about today will be relevant at whatever level of organization you like to think or work. So hopefully I'll have something for everyone by the time we've gone through, but I'll be looking at it from Elixir's point of view. We're the coordination infrastructure for databases in Europe and other services in Europe. I'll mention that briefly on the way through. So we have infrastructure. Many of us, not all countries, but most of us have convinced our governments that infrastructure for science is important and that there's an investment program for that. So that is good. And the question is, who's going to build and maintain these large-scale infrastructures? And our governments say to us, well, you built them, you look after them. So of course it's us, it's the scientists, it's the research institutes, it's the organizations who are collecting it together who will have to look after everything. So are we ready for that challenge? Are we developing the people that we need to look after infrastructure? So I'm going to give a quick overview of what infrastructure means to Elixir and the types of infrastructure that we are looking after and how we do that. I'm going to give some thoughts on developing and maintaining communities of people who are involved in stewardship. And we have some examples, mature and growing across Elixir. And then I'm going to talk about those different examples. So we have the example of data stewardship, of course, and for us, that's quite a mature topic, and we've been talking about it a lot recently. There is also the question of software stewardship as distinct from software development. We've been doing software development for a good long time. What does software stewardship look like? And is software stewardship a job for a person in the future? The jury is out. I'll express my opinions on that. And then, of course, we're in the decade of AI, if you like. So we can hypothesize about a future type of model stewardship, and what will model stewardship look like into the future as well. We've heard a lot of thoughts about this through the conference. So first, looking at infrastructure, what am I talking about when I talk about infrastructure? At Elixir, we primarily center around the biological data, the analysis of biological data, and the collection and maintenance of biological data. You've heard from the EBI, of course. Many of the EBI resources are Elixir resources as well, but others are available. I've put them all up here. It's an interesting eye chart. These are the core data resources. These are the ones that we have identified as being critical to global science that are run from within Europe. The list tends to grow faster than it shrinks. And as you can see, there's a wide variety of very different looking logos here. Everybody has a different logo to differentiate themselves. You might get the feeling that there's too much diversity, but if you're in the sessions that we ran yesterday, actually the people running the databases are agreeing principles. The people who are building interfaces are agreeing standard ways of getting the data out. There's more integration across these databases than just the logo swarm would suggest. And we're quite proud of that within Elixir. We try and maintain it, keep people talking to each other. Not that they wouldn't talk to each other anyway, but trying to do that in a structured way. There is also computational infrastructure, and here we call out Galaxy, for example. This is a slide from the European Galaxy. Of course, there's a large Australian Galaxy, a big North American Galaxy as well. Galaxy is an interesting example for me to pull out because I certainly don't pay for Galaxy servers. Galaxy in Europe is built out of a network of Pulsar servers, which are individually provided by computing centers. You will pull in software which may be containerized by us, but which will certainly have been written by somebody else. You can now bring your own data as well. So we're not providing data storage. We don't have the money to store your data, but somebody does somewhere. And what Galaxy in Europe is doing is bringing together all of these resources, bringing together software that's been developed by a community, and putting it together into an environment with a training program with the ability for people to use it. So we're quite proud of this, and our contribution to Galaxy is not so much in the provision of the services, but in the maintenance of the European community who contribute to Galaxy. And I think this is critical and something we're quite proud of. Within Elixir, we have quite a mature idea of what a community is. We have a requirement to have expertise beyond just knowing about databases, beyond just knowing about servers, and to bring together people with specific knowledge and specific problem sets. So we have a program of communities within Elixir where we bring together experts, bioinformatician experts, for example, in microbiome, for example, in single cell omics, where there's a problem area that is distinct, but overlaps with Elixir's core mission. And what we discovered over time is that communities need some things. So getting people together into a room requires the people to travel and be in a room together. Getting people to talk on a regular call requires you to organize that call. If you don't fund it at all, it's just a mailing list. It's just a group of people. We can't afford to pay for all of the research in all of this area, but there's a sweet spot where we can fund some of the activities. And by restricting our list of communities, but deciding to invest in them, we can get the best out of the natural tendency of humans to network, but allow them to achieve a little bit more than they would if we didn't exist. So we have this program of funded communities within Elixir to do just that. And what makes those communities develop and endure? They don't all go on to greatness. They don't all continue to meet. Some of them grow out of control. So what makes it happen? First of all, any community of people needs a clear definition. There's a tendency to say, I picked a word, and therefore everyone agrees what that word means. And then when you get the people together, no. You said microbiome, I thought you meant metagenomics, for example. You said data stewardship, I thought you meant data management. So it's quite important that you write down what you mean about the community before or while the people start meeting, so that people know whether they are or aren't part of the community. This will come up again, it's quite important. Then you need to work together on real problems, because otherwise you're just people chatting in their spare time. I don't know how much spare time you have, but I suspect maybe not as much as you think. So working on real problems to benefit others is really important for the community. Getting more funding for your community is not a real problem that other people will thank you for solving. So find the other problems. And then, of course, the need to partner with equivalent groups at whatever level. If you're in an institute, make sure all the people in your area are talking to each other. If you're in a country, make sure there's a national organization. And if you're wanting to work internationally, make sure you're connected to the international organizations, just to make sure that you're not making the problem worse by creating more diversity, more points of view when it comes to talk to your funders, your support agencies and everything else. Make sure that you're talking among yourself. So I was going to talk about data, going to talk about software and talk about models first, talking about data. So data central to Elixir's mission, and our research data management community is relatively newly formed, but is formed out of an activity that's been going on for many years. So in 2024, we formed one of these formal communities around research data management, and that gives people a permanent place that they can come to talk to Elixir about these topics. And the idea of a data steward can be developed out of that. The community have worked together on EU projects and Elixir projects over many years, and we partner internationally with the Research Data Alliance. We've had long interactions. Of course, we work with the International Society of Biocuration as well. So the network is well embedded globally as well. Do they have a mission statement? Well, conveniently, of course, Elixir participated in the original workshop on the FAIR principles, and we have in this community, in the FAIR principles, something that is relatively uncontentious. I don't meet a lot of people who argue with me about I.3 anymore. You know, it's not that the FAIR principles are contentious, and they do form guidance for people developing infrastructure, for people looking at data, for people using and consuming data. It's a very well constructed set of principles. And then our community itself, there was a debate, you know, is this the data stewardship community or the data management network? Would those even be different things? We resolved that by writing it down and publishing it. So our community has got a defined identity. And then what do they do? So within Elixir, we've got a set of research data management resources, the RDM kit, which is a kind of set of best practice guidelines and a way of capturing domain knowledge and expert knowledge in a rapid way, so it can be kept up to date, and the community development process as well. So we're parasites on the community, if you like, because we depend on their expertise to keep this resource up to date. But we also have the FAIR cookbook, slightly different, which is effectively for SOPs, for verification steps that can be followed as recipes. And the data management planning tool, the data stewardship, there are other data management planning tools, but this is critical, and so we drive people to use these. We also work to integrate these together, and what the research data management community allows us to do is first of all make sure those connections are in place. We also do that within Elixir, with Elixir funding, but to help people to find the navigation pathway through this complexity. So we're trying to not make the problem worse, although we're adding extra resources in. We also try and encourage people to find their way through these activities. And the community itself does this for its members. It does this for the users of those resources. It interacts with our other Elixir communities because research data management is foundational. It interacts at a European level between the national data stewardship programs, and it provides that bridge, that connection to the international agencies as well. So it gives us a European voice when we come to talk on the international stage and with funders as well. So this is working very well. This is a research data management community, and the idea of a data steward is something we can develop here. And I haven't put a slide in, for which I'll get in trouble later, about the training program that comes along with this as well, because of course we have to develop the new data stewards, and we have to make sure at a national level, at an institutional level, and everywhere else that this is ongoing. So that's the easy one, solved. Now we come to a slightly more challenging one, software stewardship. So can we extend the experience of data stewardship to the long-term maintenance of software? So again, we have some existing activities. We have a technology-focused group within Elixir, the tools platform, and a set of resources, again, that we're using to encourage the reuse of software, the reusability of software. We've had some EU projects which are specifically looking at this, and I'll pick out one that's ongoing at the moment. And there are now, at least at a national level, networks of people who call themselves not software stewards, but research software engineers. And the profession of research software engineering is maturing. Some countries have had their societies for several years. And internationally, I think those societies are connecting up now as well. So there's an idea of a research software engineering professional, which is really quite developed. And here is a difference where I would say there are data curators, data stewards, and data generators, and they can often be different people. I think the consensus is in research software engineering that very few research software engineers should be starting from scratch. Nearly everyone should be working on someone else's software as their starting point. And therefore, every research software engineer, to some extent, has to be thinking about sustainability and stewardship of their own software from the minute they put their first GitHub commit in. And therefore, I suspect we may not find research software stewards as a future job title. It may just be that it's one of the skills of a research software engineer that comes to be expected. Again, do we have a manifesto? Well, the FAIR principles can be extended to software. They can't be directly applied, but with a little bit of modification, they can. And the Research Data Alliance and the Research Software Alliance have a recommendation for extending the FAIR principles to research software. And we have some movement towards trying to work out what a European level network of research software engineers would look like. Not yet a manifesto or a community definition, but at least a project to develop it. Within Elixir, we have these resources. So we have bio.tools, which we help to sustain, which is a registry for software. And it's very comprehensive. Most software tools are in there. Biocontainers, so that you can find a containerized, usable version of the software quite easily. Workflow hubs, so you can register more complicated workflows and make sure those are reusable. And fair sharing, which allows you to look at the data standards themselves and have those also registered as well. Again, complexity. So how do we make sure we're enriching the practitioners without actually making it worse just by adding more tools? So here we have the eVerse project. This is funded in Europe under the European Open Science Cloud framework. And the goal of eVerse is to try and create that framework of research software engineers and agreed principles around research software engineering practice and software excellence. One thing you'll notice is it's not a life science consortium here. I won't go through all of them in the interest of time, but you'll see CERN there, for example. Life science is not CERN's thing. They're more interested in much smaller things. And the profession of research software engineering reaches a little bit beyond the life sciences, and it seems to be a more sensible way to start building this community. The goal of eVerse is to build effectively a virtual institute across Europe, which allows software engineers, people who self-identify as a research software engineer, to come together and share their practices. And for example, one of the things that they will be developing is a research software quality kit, very similar in many ways to the research data management kit that was developed under the Elixir program earlier. And then I'll end on this one. Model stewardship is a new problem, of course. So it's not just data, it's not just software. It's not at all a trivial problem to share and reuse models. So it's becoming an expert topic in its own right. Do we have a manifesto? Well, several are available in Elixir. We help to develop the DOME recommendations, which are publishing recommendations for model reusability, particularly from the literature. And we have a new paper on open and sustainable AI from the University of Padua and the Elixir network as well. So trying to work out what this problem definition is, at least, and some of the ways to approach it. From the DOME recommendations, we've been able to produce a DOME registry, so a registry of papers that have machine learning methods, where we've annotated those and assessed the reusability of those models. There are other efforts to try and build executable reusable models, which is even more challenging. I confess we haven't addressed through this approach. GigaScience is recommending the DOME recommendations for your model papers now, for example. And then on the question of open and sustainable AI, there's a whole set of principles around our model. So reusability, I would say obviously, but it's not so obvious apparently. Reproducibility, which is even more important because some of these models are very expensive to train. But at some point, someone has to go back and revalidate the methods underneath them. And then sustainability. We've all seen the huge data centers being built. Every time you retrain a model, you burn some CO2. So how do we deal with that? We don't yet know what a model steward looks like, but we can see the kind of ecosystem that they will grow out of. I'm going to stop there And I'm not going to spill my water. Thank you very much for your time. Oh, except for my acknowledgements, I haven't thanked everybody within Elixir who's been involved, because there's thousands of them, but I picked out the people who helped me put these slides together. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. So one quick question, then we'll transition to a panel.
Thanks, teacher. What's the vision on funding these stewards, for instance, the software stewards, beyond, for instance, the EOS project?
So I would say that the research software engineers are part of your kind of the core requirement of your activity, in the same way that a data curator is required if you're going to run a database. A research software engineer is required if you're going to run a service. It's difficult to find the money for these, and there's a case for aggregating. Many universities have got teams of research software engineers, in the same way many institutes bring their databases together and have the curation teams sort of centralized as well. So I suspect that will be part of it. But also some of these are roles that you take, so being able to develop the skills to be a software engineer, a data steward, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a full-time data steward or a full-time software engineer. So I think there's a kind of blended approach there. But I think identifying the profession, making the case for the need for the profession, and then producing small expert teams is probably one of the most sustainable ways to do it. I'm not making that case for models yet, but certainly for software and data stewardship, I would make that case.
Thank you. Let's thank